Hi everybody, welcome back to Shelf Life. This one's being released on January 3rd, 2024, a new year. And sometimes when the new year comes around, we kind of want a new us. Maybe not completely new, just some things better. Well, maybe this book could help you with one of those things if this is a problem you particularly have. Today's book is the illustrated book of Bad Arguments by Ali Almosawi and illustrated by Alejandro Giraldo. This is going to be the hardest book I've ever had to cover on here. I thought Quotable Asshole was going to be the hardest. I didn't think about this one. The reason why is because this isn't a book in the same way as all the other books that I've covered on here. This is a book written by a former Mozilla and Apple engineer who tends to write books on critical thinking and computer science that's all about saying our arguments are using logical fallacies and other sorts of logical traps that are keeping us from having the best points that we could be making in an argument. It covers a gamut of different topics like No True Scotsman, appeal to fear, straw man. You've also got slippery slopes, ad hominems. Ooh, that one's tough to say. Things like that are, from a distance, they look like they are an argument to whatever discussion is being had, but in reality are a breakdown in that argument. It's gone off track, but it's gone off track so slightly that it's hard to catch. And this is a book with cute animal illustrations talking about all of these different fallacies that you can get into, with the hope that if you can identify them, number one, you won't be taken in by them. And also, even better, you won't commit them yourself. This is a pretty recent work, 2014, so 10 years ago. At least 10 years ago as of this recording. Only about 50 or so pages. It's the shortest one I've had to date. And of course, if I'm sharing it with you, I must have liked it a lot, and that is 100% true. It was such a quick thing that I was really sad to see that it was over, that I actually wanted there to be more logical fallacies that we're prone to, just so I could keep taking it in. I was happy when I started putting this episode together that they have another one that I didn't know about it called An Illustrated Book of Loaded Language. And you better believe I'm going to be buying that 100% for sure. This, I think, is a fun way to address logical fallacies. Fun in the sense that they try to cover a couple directions at once. Basically, the way this book is laid out is you're going to have a block of text on the left-hand side of the page. Here's the name of something. Here's some other names it goes by. Here's a description. Here are examples. And then on the right, they've got their illustrator, Alejandro Giraldo, who is going to give you just a plain, basic example using what I think is some really great looking art. And that's what this book is. It can actually make you feel a little bad after you read it, despite how it's a cheery, happy-looking book, because we are talking about logical fallacies, which are a thing that we'd like to avoid if we could. And what you will find is, oops, I've done these. And you'll start to feel like anytime you've argued with somebody on Twitter or in the comment section of this story or that story, you might start to feel, oh, yeah, I do that one a lot. I need to stop doing that one. Which is really the best part about this, is if you can identify what these issues are, you can avoid them in two ways. You won't get fooled by them, and you won't actually use them yourself, hopefully. Because it's so short, and because of the way that it's done, I really don't have a whole lot I can tell you about this book, but I did want to address a lot of the feedback out there. These have a hell of a lot more ratings than most of the books that I read. I don't know why. I'm not sure if this was somewhat viral when it came out, maybe in 2014. I'm not sure. But somehow a lot of people came across this, and the ratings are very solid, but there are some negative feedback that I want to share with you guys, of course, and address them if I can. First one, of course, we're talking about arguments. Where do you argue the most? In politics. There is, I believe, a certain political lean on the side of the author for this, based on just this book. There's no denying that. And of course, I think I just did something like that recently. I think when I did the episode on Ramp Hollow, I ran into the same thing. Although in that case, the author comes out and says, I'm this, and for the remaining quarter of this book, here's how I would address this. Whenever that happens, whenever the lean is clear or even admitted, it becomes a team game all of a sudden. If you're on the side of it, you're not going to see any issue with it at all. If you're not on that side, it's the worst thing ever. You have to fight it tooth and nail. And so, of course, a lot of negative reviews are in fact by people who are on the other quote-unquote team than what this person is on. Normally, I would argue that's silly. But in this one book, I will say, you know what? Maybe it could have been done better. And here's what I mean by that. The art with the great looking animals and the style that this illustrator has, they help separate you, right? You're looking at pictures of pigs in suits at a club, for example, is in one of them. That's I think that was the No True Scotsman page. And by looking at pigs in suits, you're sort of taking the human element out of it. You're not seeing yourself in the illustration, or you shouldn't be. And therefore, I wish they would have done that with the topic somehow. I wish they would have taken the illustrations and said, okay, what goofy real situation would these pigs be in? Maybe, if I remember correctly, no, I don't. It's been too long since I read it. Basically, the idea should be something like, all right, we're drawing pigs for this one. No True Scotsman. How about we have them saying something like, no true pig would build his house out of straw, please. You know, you build with brick. And if you're not building with brick, you're just not a pig. You're not one of us. Just keeping it separate from political issues on this, I think would have done better. I think it would have avoided turning people off, because it's hard, it's hard to tell ourselves it's okay. Let's look at the merits of what we're seeing and then continue on with the work. And I think a lot of people just didn't here. So I know I took a different stance with Ramp Hollow. I'm taking a different stance here. One other thing that came up a lot was the point of the illustrations. And I don't know if this is a good point or not. So I kind of wanted to shoot it out to you guys, see what you thought. A lot of people said having the illustrations just be about an example of what was on the page, they didn't feel like it was enough. They wanted more. They wanted the illustrations to be the driver of the book. And like I described earlier, it's not. It's just the right page for the left page is the driver of the book with all the text. I think that's a reasonable point. It certainly didn't get in my way at all. I didn't need something to look like a graphic novel. I was happy to have clear text explaining what they were talking about on that particular page. And then when you're done with it and you're done thinking about that page, looking to the right, seeing the artwork, getting a laugh out of any joke they might have done, felt like a great palate cleanser before moving on to the next segment. But if you don't think that's how something that's describing itself as an illustrated book should go, I can understand that, and I wanted to put that out there. Lastly, okay, this is another important one that I can understand, but I think it depends on your approach. It's an illustrated book, so of course it's for kids, right? I don't know why people still think that today. It still comes up because something has artwork and color on it, it must be for children, which is just not true. More than a decade before this came out, Adult Swim came out. Those were cartoons, but they were never for kids, right? So why are we thinking from back in 2014 to today, oh, I got this book to have my kids learn about logical fallacies, but it's too intense, it's not widely accessible enough for them. Okay, but you should have checked it out yourself first and realized that's not what this is for. Besides that, I actually think you'd have to be a pretty young kid to not be able to get this, especially if a parent is reading this with you. I would love to have kids and go over this book with them. Be like, okay, what's been on your mind? Think about where your stance is, make your points, let's write them down. And then let's treat this like a checklist. Have you accidentally done any of these things that you're supposed to avoid? Let's find out. And if you did, how can we fix it? Does recognition that you accidentally fell into this logical trap, does it change your mind? Or no, is there just a better way to approach it? Or is that one point among many that you've tried to make for your argument just not one you should keep? So I think it can be for kids. For me, I'm not really good at figuring out when is the right age for this, but from my reading, I think a 10-year-old for sure I would do this with. And by the time they're 14, 15, 16, they can probably do this on their own, no problem. Maybe even earlier. It's going to depend on the kid too. So those are valid points though, even if I personally tend to disagree with them. I wanted to put them out there because maybe you looked at this cover and you said, ooh, that's for Johnny. He's going to turn 7 next week. Maybe not, unless Johnny is that far ahead. I really enjoyed this to the point where, like I said earlier, I was so excited to find out there was a second book in this series that I didn't know about, and that is currently in my Amazon cart. So I think we know where that's going. And speaking of going, I'm going to have to go now, guys, because I've got a book to buy and a lot of other things to do. Thank you for joining me, and I will talk to you guys next month. Bye.